Hey everybody, welcome to the American Sci-Fi Fantasy Media Track panel on Wandavision. In an effort to try to be a little more topic-oriented at con, we're going to kind of do a lot more of our summary kind of pieces and kind of lookovers on show-specific stuff during the year, and that's what we're here for. A lot more of our summary kind of pieces. And somebody's got a feedback there on show-specific stuff during the year, and that's what we're here for. Interesting. Somebody have a YouTube channel open?
No.
Let me mute myself real quick. Sorry.
That was weird.
Yeah, we're still hearing it. Okay, technical issues. Sorry, everybody. Just you guys make sure your mics are muted for now until we're kind of talking. I'm making sure everything in mine's closed. Just you guys make sure your mics are muted for now until we're kind of talking.
Whoa.
Technical difficulties. So, Wow. So, okay, you guys are all muted, and I'm not. Wow, this is kind of weird. We close everything else out. Maybe it was me. That's the first time that's ever happened. So I apologize if that was the case. Wow. Okay, jumping back into this. So, yeah, we're going to be covering a lot more show-specific stuff during the year with some, like the OTP panels, some different things like that. Through the year. And if you have any suggestions that we can cover, let me know, either on the group for either on the YouTube feed here or on the group for Facebook. That is a good option. But anyway, so I'm Kelly Harkins. I'm the director of the tract, and I'm going to go ahead and let my panelists introduce themselves. Alice, you want to start?
Hi, I'm Alice Edwards. I am a psychological research assistant, and I live for and love all sorts of science fiction fantasy media, and the Marvel universe has always been one of my favorites. I'm particularly partial to Wandavision, or to these characters, because I'm a big Young Avengers fan, and so Billy and Tommy play a role in that later down the line, and so that's my love for this.
AJ, you want to chime in?
I'm AJ. I work for the American Sci-Fi Fantasy Track, and I love the Marvel Universe. I can't get enough of it. So I was all over WandaVision and waiting for Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Friday. So, and Nathan.
Hi, I'm Nathan Laws. I'm the host of the 42 Cast, which is your ultimate answer to fandom geekiness and everything. I am what they called a Marvel zombie back in the day, which is someone who only collects Marvel comics. I collected just about... At one point, when Marvel really cut its line down, I actually collected everything they were putting out except some of the licensed stuff that didn't happen in the Marvel Universe. So I am super big into the universe, the characters, and the MCU has been, hitting on all cylinders, and so I've been very happy with the adaptations in the MCU. So, of course, WandaVision was, something that was right up my alley.
Awesome. Now, we did have another person who was supposed to be here. Maybe he'll join us, but, we're running late, so... We'll see. All right. So I wanted to kind of get your initial thoughts and just kind of overview without going into a lot of detail. And AJ, do you want to start that out?
I thought that it was good after the first 3 episodes. The first 3 episodes were very broken up and didn't make any sense to me. But once you got past that and started figuring out what was going on, I thought that was a very good show and a very good part of the MCU.
All right, Nathan?
I had my suspicions about what was going on, and as someone who grew up watching a lot of those very old sitcoms also, I was appreciating it for what it was. I mean, I do agree it was a little slow. I actually did a thing where I waited for the whole show to drop and then did like 3 episodes at a time, which I
Yeah.
felt was a much better way of watching. Because I can understand the people who are frustrated watching week to week with those early episodes, and I really enjoyed that. And since each episode was different enough from the one before it, I felt like that also really helped with it, because like that all happens in the first 3, but I was enjoying just the riffing on the various sitcoms. So I liked that. So yeah, I was pretty happy with it.
Alice.
It was a very lovely 4-hour movie. I don't think it was a great television show, but I loved the narrative, the characters. I love some of the technical stuff they did. I went and watched the making of special, and it provided some really interesting insights. They did some really cool stuff, and the story was good. As a piece of television, I think it needed some work.
I'll kind of agree with all of you on that. I did watch it week to week, and I think the thing that kept me on in the beginning was that appreciation for those sitcoms I had grown up with too. I remember watching the Van Dyke Show in syndication, and the Brady Bunch and Bewitched. All those, I remember watching them. So I really appreciated some of those call outs, and there's so many Easter eggs to them too that I think was one of the things that kind of kept me going. I think it was uneven because it is such a bridge piece between kind of, the phase 3 stuff now going into phase 4 and kind of setting up. There was probably a little too much setup is what I kind of feel like. But they had some nice bits, and of course they kept us guessing, I think, all the way through. I don't know how many of you figure. I mean, there were some things I was like, well, that's probably no. And we were watching the kind of the guesses each week to kind of see where everybody was thinking it was going to go, and we were pretty far off, I'll admit.
The thing I find that's funny about the show, and talking about it as a 4-hour movie, I think kind of makes this a fair comparison, is that thematically it's dealing with the same elements as Wonder Woman 84, but it does it in such a far more elegant way. The discussion of grief and the discussion of believing a lie and the cost of a lie and how you eventually have to, accept the truth and things like that. And I liked how they played with those concepts and what it meant. And honestly, I don't think that it really was like, I know it's a bridge piece, but I found it satisfying because of where we leave Wanda and Vision at the end of it. And so I was quite happy with that. And so as a piece just sort of examining Wanda's grief and just sort of like over 9 episodes, I thought that was actually really cool. I was afraid they were going to go for a happy ending. And that was the thing I kept going like, oh God, because of mass appeal, they're going to want to do a happy ending. They're going to want to do a happy ending. And then I got to the end and I was like, no, not a happy ending. This is good. Because the MCU, it doesn't end. Right, and this is what comics realize, is that the story doesn't end, so they don't feel the need to do the thing Hollywood does is, well, we have a movie, the end has to be happy. Well, the story doesn't end. Maybe there'll be a happy ending later, so I like that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear the MCU really takes the long view, and that's, I give them credit. I've been both a Marvel and a DC fan, and I think that's where DC does lack with them, like sticking to the multiverse and not thinking bigger scale, longer term. So, Alice and AJ, what do you think on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I'm knowing a lot of how the comics have handled the particular arcs that it was that WandaVision was pulling for, particularly for Wanda. I did, in contrast, this is a happy ending, which is honestly kind of horrifying when you think about it. To think of like the handling of mental illness in House of M, for example, is just really not great. And so, letting this be a moment of, reaching through grief and, coming through on the other side like that, having it be that very poignant exploration of that, I loved, and that I think is a lot of what kept me with the show, even in its roughest moments of pacing and the issues that I had.
I agree. I've had issues with depression, and the show, I think, addressed it well. And I think that it really spoke to a lot of people on that level. Because you do have to go through it, and you always wish that you can, change things. But in the end, it's going to end up just the way it was.
Very true. So, if you could pick one moment from all of the episodes, what one moment really kind of stuck with you?
Is there an order to this, or we just pipe up?
Well, I see people's minds thinking. So, and since I didn't prep you for that, so if you have one, Nathan, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it has to be the end twist with the fight with Agatha, where, it looks like Wanda is losing. And, it had me kind of guessing, like, how is this going to play out? Like, what exactly is happening here? And then to have Wanda basically setting up she paid attention. And so it was like, oh no, what I've been doing is I've been creating the runes all around us while this has been happening. And so it's like, now this is my territory and, you can't do anything. And that moment was so satisfying because I like it when they do that, when they set up the elements, but you don't see them coming together. And then it's like, there's the reveal. So it doesn't feel like it came out of left field. It feels like, yes, this is good. So I absolutely love that moment.
All right. Let me add our other panelist here. Gary, welcome.
Hello.
Fashionably late, I see.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah, well, I was doing my wizard training.
Oh, yeah. So, Gary, if you want to quick introduce yourself, and then I'll put you on the spot with the question I just asked.
My name is Gary Mitchell. You can find me on the Twitters here at Gary_Mitchell with one L. Yes, Star Trek fans, it's my real name. I am a writer, podcaster, reviewer, and the co-director of the American Sci-Fi Classics track, along with Mr. Joe Crow. Hello, Joe. And every Thursday, we do a live panel at 9 p.m. Eastern on all kinds of things.
You guys are much more masochistic than I am. Absolutely.
We like it.
So the question I just asked, and I'll let Alice and AJ chime in after you. Nathan just answered. If you could pick one moment out of all the episodes of WandaVision that really kind of clicked with you for whatever reason, what one was it?
A moment that really just grabbed me?
Either shock or love or like, ooh, or whatever.
Well, I'm not going to take the obvious answer because I think somebody else will probably take it. The one that made me really scream out loud was when we were doing the previously on and going through Wanda's history and backstory, and we get to where she gets to meet the Mind Stone and in the scepter in the Hydra base, and when the Mind Stone comes out and then blows up, and there's comic book Wanda backlit by the Mind Stone. I was just like, holy crap, and expletive deleted. Because that was like, we'd seen bits and teases of multiverse, and we've seen bits and pieces of other things, but seeing the straight up, even though it was just for a second and extremely backlit, but seeing the comic book Wanda Maximoff there, I was just like, oh yeah, it's on.
Okay, Alice, what was your moment?
I think in the absence of being able to pick any one very beautiful, emotionally poignant moment, I'm going to go with the utter fan service for me, in particular, the twins getting their powers in the Halloween episode. Those are two of my favorite characters, getting even these first hints of them coming into themselves, and also especially my boy Tommy, who often gets forgotten in the comics getting love. He got his first, and now everyone knows that he was the first. He was the planned twin, as much as either of them were in the show. But he was the expected one, and Billy was the surprise.
Good choice. AJ?
Okay, borrowing Nathan's point, which was mine. Other than that,
Smart.
I thought the bubblegum was the funniest thing. I laughed myself silly at that. And it just made me enjoy the episodes even more, thinking about that and how Vision was completely lost half the time. And the bubblegum just killed me.
It's so fitting for like a 60s sitcom too. I mean, it's
Right.
like it just fit right in. So I love that.
Yeah, it was such a solid Bewitched style, like you said, 60s, like a Munsters, Addams Family. That episode would have just slid right into any of those.
Yeah, we'll probably talk a little bit about that too if we have time. But I'm going to pick the one that probably made me scream the loudest was when Pietro shows up.
That's the one I didn't pick.
I have to admit, I was like, I just cheered. I absolutely fully admit that. Yes, there were other moments too, but I thought that was such an incredibly smart and intelligent move for them to do, as kind of really marrying the whole Fox side of things to their side of things, and of course he was one of the best parts of that X-Men. So I'm a little disappointed if they really just kind of blow it off the way they implied at the end, because I understand there's an alternative ending, which makes it seem like maybe it wasn't what it seemed. But
yeah,
so
I've heard so many fans whining about that oh my God, it wasn't Magneto, it wasn't it wasn't really, it didn't bring in the X-Men, it didn't, like, it was a casting gag. People, get over it.
Right, exactly. I don't think there's any way, unless they were going to open up the multiverse, but that's not what this was. Like, and I understand they said they deliberately trolled the fans, and I get it, but it's like, but emotionally, there's nothing that comes from introducing him as the actual Quicksilver from the X-Men universe and throwing him into that story. So, I mean, there's no payoff other than for the fit. Like, narratively, there's no payoff from that. And so to me, it's like,
I don't agree with that. I
think there could have been. I think it wouldn't have worked in the story that they were telling. I think I could see a story where that works, but it was not the story of WandaVision as we were given it.
True, I will admit to that. I mean, I get it was trolling, I get what they were doing, but to me, it is a good introduction to the multiverse. As in, he could have easily been Pietro from another universe, which literally he is. And I think that does not diminish the grief she has for losing her brother. And I think that they made still very clear, even though, and, the dichotomy of him, seeing him dead with the bullet holes and she's remembering that death. I still think they made value.
But then basically you're adding into the story with, we got to explain all this X-Men stuff within the MCU context now. And so then that just gets in the way of what they're trying to do with it. And so to me, that just seemed like it would have just been it would have just satisfied the people who are comic readers that want the X-Men right now and won't wait for Feige to develop them within the MCU. Oh, this is a way we can just snap our fingers. I'd rather they just develop them from scratch in the MCU and not, try to use the multiverse as a way of getting the X-Men in.
Personally, I love the.
I agree, which is why I hated that whole little storyline, because I thought it was too complex for what they were trying to do, and brought in too many things that it was too hard to explain in the space of an episode and a half.
Yeah, I was glad it was just a joke, because that to me was the best case scenario, was that it was just trolling the fans.
I will agree to disagree then on that, because I don't think, especially since they have said this was kind of the introduction to the multiverse, and they are kind of letting that build up.
But that is kind of what they're doing here. This is the introduction to the multiverse in the fact that they're showing, hey, there's a multiverse, and
Doctor Strange. This is setting up Doctor Strange 2, which is where they're actually going to introduce the multiverse. Is what I think is the point.
Yeah. So
I could go either way. So we'll table that one. I don't think we could go on this one. So we were kind of talking about a lot of people were very dismayed by the first 3 episodes, as some of you have mentioned.
People with no patience.
No, here's the. It was shot as it was written as a 1 hour pilot, and they cut it into 3 parts, and you cannot convince me otherwise.
I think it's the way I've been looking at the whole Marvel Disney Plus series is this is kind of they're definitely approaching with different genres, and I think that's smart. Because here you have, how many times can you do the superhero riff over and over and over again? Which, it obviously works, but here they're kind of, let's take this, and they've made it clear that, Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to be kind of the buddy cop thing. Loki, they've said, is going to be a very noir detective kind of thing. And this was kind of the sitcom vibe. So you got to go through some of that to that. So, but a lot of people had struggled with that because I think they wanted that superhero vibe. Do you guys feel that, or? I loved the sitcom premise. I think they almost didn't commit to it enough. But one of my favorite things to hold up about, especially early Marvel Studios movies, is that they did a very similar thing. Captain America 1 was shot as a war film. Iron Man 1 was shot as a drama. They got Ken Brown, a Shakespearean director, to do Thor. They've always been, at least initially, they were playing a lot with genre and working into that and relying on the tropes and techniques of other genres to kind of inform and influence the shape of their superhero movies to make them something new and unique. And I think that has been one of their greatest strengths.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with WandaVision, it's so, because, you can say it's a sitcom, but it's kind of not. Like, the sitcom is the veneer. And that's one of those things that, I think helped me being a comic reader and knowing the Vision and Scarlet Witch limited series and what happens. Because even though I knew it wasn't going to be exactly the same, knowing that it's probably all an illusion and sort of thinking of the fact that Wanda's in a very dark place right now, I kind of clued into the fact that this isn't, a lot of people wanted Mephisto to appear and whatnot, but I was like, no, I think this is Wanda. I think this is her and her grief trying to create an ideal world for herself. And I didn't know until they explained why she used it, because I was like, she's like from Europe. So why is she using American sitcoms as like the basis for that? But then, of course, they explained that she was watching those as a kid, that they had gotten a hold of like some DVD sets or whatever. And so it was like, oh, okay. Well, that creates this nice sort of emotional connection. These are things from her childhood. So not only is it trying to create an ideal world for herself, she's also trying to like go back to this ideal time in her life before everything happened, where her parents died and she still had her brother and everything else. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is actually this is really nice character building. And we get all that superhero stuff in the back half. So I mean, it kind of, it kind of took the shape that I thought it would, and I like that.
Gary?
Well, I think AJ was going to say something.
Oh, whichever.
I hated the whole sitcom part of it. I thought it was confusing and boring, and until they introduced the whole sword thing, I just practically slept through the whole thing. I was, playing on my phone or playing on my computer or something, because I just could not pay attention to it. It just lost my interest so quickly.
Yeah, and I can get that as someone who grew up watching the old sitcoms, and I'm an old man on UHF watching Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and all that on UHF growing up. I have an appreciation for those old sitcoms. And for me, I can understand why it doesn't play to someone who's not a fan of that style of television, because it's very specific. I mean, that first episode could be any episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show at all. And I've heard people saying that they wish there had been more nuggets in there to tide people over. Like, we get the sword helicopter at the one point. We get the rewind at the one episode when the beekeeper guy comes out. But for me, they were just such incredible recreations out of love of that era, each era of television, that I was able to hang on my hat on that and stick with it.
I think they probably could have dropped a little bit more, but I think that's the surreal nature of what they were going for, is that, that suspension of reality and just, did they take it too far? Maybe. I mean, from what I was saying, they do a lot of those are from specific episodes too of each of those sitcoms too. So it's kind of interesting to see that they held that true to the theme songs, to the fonts, all those things. Were pretty amazing.
Yeah, can we talk about how those theme songs, because each one managed to give you some clues and little digs of that something is not right.
Oh yes, I think so. Nathan, you want to chime in on that?
I didn't pay attention to the lyrics of the songs close enough to be able to chime in on that. I was just nodding and saying, like, I appreciated the theme songs just because they were great riffs on the actual theme songs for the shows. But I like the fact that when I saw some photos for the series, that I was like, wait, is that the Family Ties living room? And sure enough, when they did Family Ties, it's like, it does look like the Family Ties living room.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The staircase from Bewitched, this.
The staircase from the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, AJ, do you have any thoughts on the theme songs or anything else?
I'm
really did like that part. So
I didn't really pay attention to the lyrics. I did notice that it was the Brady Bunch stairway, because I didn't grow up watching the Dick Van Dyke Show, but I grew up watching, the Brady Bunch and Bewitched, and so I did catch some of those things. But yeah, the theme songs, I just didn't really pay attention to the lyrics.
This is something fun from the making of special, is what Bobby and Kristen Lopez really focused on in their interview was the motif that they worked into every it's the same motif of the Wandavision gets incorporated into every song in some way that then fits the decade.
Absolutely. I think, and that's, as the whole thing goes down, of course, the signal breaks down until we get to the episode where they're like, she's not broadcasting anymore. And, I teach a lot of international students, and it is surprising how many of them have talked about learning English through friends and, things like that. And so, kind of tying that into Wanda's history, really, I was like, yeah, I absolutely know people who have learned English that way. So it's interesting to see them bring that into that play, into that whole thing, and using that as a touchstone for American culture. So,
yeah. And again, it was a way for her to, I really wonder about the commercial breaks. Was that something that she created, or was that Agatha, or just was that, because those were some of my favorite little something's not right moments.
Yes.
Like in the first one with the toaster, where it's obviously the Stark bomb.
Well, I think the whole broadcast was Agatha. I don't think she was broadcasting it out. She said that she was trying to get Wanda to like come out of this. So I think she lured Sword there. There's also the question of, why do some people remember that the town exists and others don't? And again, I think that's Agatha. I think she was trying to undo certain things that Wanda was doing to try and bring in outside forces to force Wanda to sort of come out of it. So yeah, I would believe the commercials come from her.
Yeah. Well, we know Sword came into it just because Monica vanished, because, Jimmy Woo starts out, which, did we ever find out who was the FBI? Okay, yeah.
The theory is that it's the mailman, because the mailman kept saying, don't shoot the messenger. So if he was in witness location, that makes sense. Because otherwise that line, I don't know why that line was there.
Yeah, it's definitely something that could use a rewatch on that aspect, because I didn't get where the commercials quite... I mean, yes, you could see the certain elements, the toaster and things like that, but it's still the picking those two actors for that specific thing each time. I'm thinking there's more there that I haven't connected.
Well, my favorite is still Lagos, just for it's the tie into Civil War, and it's like the lady ends up with red hands, and for a mess you didn't mean to make.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm sure. Go into more of that in the making of?
No, not at all. They don't touch on the commercials at all. But like, speaking of a rewatch, obvious the Stark toaster in hindsight is very clearly the bomb, especially with that red light that comes through the black and white filter. But initially, I was like, oh, is this one's about Vision? This one's about Vision. And then, then as you get, because, yes, we knew that they had, the Stark bomb come in, but we didn't have that key visual of the blinking light until now, at least as I recall. I don't know, I kind of have wiped as much of Age of Ultron from my memory as I can.
I think they did show it in the flashback in Age of Ultron, because they do flash back to them staring at the bomb in Age of Ultron, so I do think it's there.
Okay, then that's me.
So speaking of like Vision, so how many of you, granted, of course, we are left at the end of Endgame with Vision being dead, but we don't know what happens. So when we start, and of course he walks on and to that black and white screen, what were your first thoughts on kind of that and understanding where they might be going? Nathan, you want to start?
My theory on that one was that she did take the body and was somehow just... I thought it was just a puppet with strings, and I was like, this is going to be off. Like it, I mean, actually, the explanation they gave was so much more interesting, and I'm so much happier with it. But I basically thought that was the thing, is he was just basically an animated puppet,
Especially with the glimpse of it in episode 3, I thought that that was supposed to be literally her not putting up the glamour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. That was my theory once we got that look at dead corpse Vision, which is one of the most terrifying things in the show.
Yes.
But it ties in. Also, I love the fact that the opening lines of the first episode is "My husband with his indestructible head." It's like, oh, you haven't dealt with this at all, have you, Wanda?
AJ?
Yeah, my first thoughts were kind of that she somehow intercepted the stone and put it back in his head after the whole Endgame scenario.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of what I thought, that somehow she had used it to rewind time, used one of the stones. But I was way off.
I think that was their plan. So, which actually kind of brings me to one other thing. I was kind of, because I was like, I was thinking puppet, like you all were. And then, of course, when we see him trying to push through the wall, I was like, okay, not puppet, if that's happening. But then it kind of brings to mind is like, we know, obviously, the time stone is Doctor Strange's, and he's got to kind of have it back, I'm guessing, for the next movie.
Well, we know that let me put my nerd geek hat on.
I think we all were in them.
Yeah, we know that Thanos destroyed the stones at the beginning of Endgame, that he had wiped them out.
Right.
So when they went back in time, they stole them from time, but then that's the whole point of Steve at the end, is putting them back.
I think
he has to put them back where they came from. So all the stones at this point in the Marvel timeline are gone.
Right.
Well, they're atomized. Is this, and this one's pure speculation, but like my read on it is they're very matter can never be created or destroyed, only change. So I imagine singularities as powerful as these are will at some point recoalesce, but probably not on a human lifespan scale.
Yeah. Well,
I thought.
Oh, AJ.
That's kind of what I thought she had done, was somehow remade the stone from the matter and remade Vision from that.
Nathan.
Being a comic reader, I have a big problem with being able to destroy like the 6 aspects of creation. But beyond that, so I had a problem with Endgame, like right there. I was like, what? You cannot destroy the Infinity. Even the Infinity Stones cannot destroy themselves. It's like the one thing they can't do. But I was like, okay, like we'll just take that as the premise. So, but basically the description for Doctor Strange 2 says something about him trying to recreate the Time Stone, and he's trying to figure out how to do that. And so I think that is going to play into future stories. But yeah, at this point, there are no stones to use.
They don't have the stones.
Right. Although the fact that Wanda says there's a piece of the Mind Stone still inside of her, I think will also play into that.
Yeah, that's
Right.
what got me, was because when we finally get the reveal of how of her building Westview, and everything is the red energy, the Scarlet Witch energy, except Vision. If you watch, when Vision is created, that energy is yellow, which is the Mind Stone. So I think that Nathan kind of nailed it. Nathan nailed it with that. Of that, there is, her energy was unleashed by the Mind Stone, so she's still affected by it in some way. And Vision himself says, "I am the echo of the Mind Stone."
Right, and I do think. I don't think they can simply be destroyed, and I think they will come back in the MCU lifetime. Because also, and when you think about it with Gamora and things like that, we know she's coming back, so that kind of brings that whole side of things too. So it's like,
the Ancient One said in Endgame that if you remove the Infinity Stones, that it would cause reality to break down. So that's one of the things that I said at the end of Endgame. I was like, okay, well, that was the reason why you needed to put them back in time, was so that you didn't unravel reality in the past. But I'm like, but now there are no stones in the present, so doesn't that unravel reality?
No, because they still exist. They're just on that atomized scale where no single person can use them.
But I think that's what the multiverse of madness is about.
Yeah.
Reality is going to start to unravel, and somehow they're going to have to fix it. I think that's the plot.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
just
then
don't want them to be the MacGuffin the MCU drives around anymore.
Yeah.
That's no problem with them coming back, but we need to move past them now.
Yep.
I think there's enough material that they can, but that kind of brings up the other MacGuffin of the Darkhold. So, of course, the MCU has. I was like, okay, this is not the first time we've seen the Darkhold show up in the MCU, just not on the big screen. Both the Avengers and Runaways tapped into it. And it's kind of been a default, just it's the evil book.
It's the MCU's Necronomicon.
Right. And because they can't use it that. So.
Well, actually, they could as public domain, but yeah.
But they want to make it theirs.
Right.
So, of course, and it always kind of has the same look. I know I checked back on some Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to see, and I'm like, okay, they are keeping the same look in it.
It's an aesthetic. And now granted, I think WandaVision made the better choice because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. literally just has it Darkhold in the Princess Bride ambigram font.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah, it was the same book, literally, that they used in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Runaways, because it was the same font and everything. But this is slightly different. But the actual look of the book itself and how the book looks, rather than just the cover, it looks the same as the
it's got a little more Necronomicon look to it.
Right.
It's got a cool logo instead of Darkhold, which I thought that was clever that it read Darkhold either direction. But I'm down with something that'll make a fun tattoo that we'll see at some point, I'm sure.
But they showed in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that the text of the Darkhold can change, so it still doesn't take away from it that it looks different.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
WandaVision.
Right.
Oh, I've started the timer of when we find out Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a multiverse.
Maybe. AJ? You have anything you want to chime in on that?
No, I'm all about the Necronomicon aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the way this show entirely ends, we see almost like a Dr. Manhattan kind of vibe going there with Wanda and the Darkhold, studying and learning. And I think that's also going to play a lot into Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
But of course, we got a year before that happens. And there'll be some more things. Do you think they're going to touch on any of these? I have not heard that they are, unless they bring it up in Loki, but I've not heard that they're going to touch on any of these aspects in the other Disney Marvel series.
I think they're planning for each of the Disney Marvel series to kind of stand on their own, kind of like the movies did, where there are connections, but they're not as tied like maybe we would want. And there's also the timeline aspect, because we know that Falcon and Winter Soldier was actually supposed to come out first, because it takes place 3 days after Endgame happened. And then WandaVision is 3 weeks or so. So I don't think there would be any crossover there unless they happen to mention something because it was supposed to allude to WandaVision. And then Loki looks like it's going to be all over the place, including the Marriott. So
Yeah, I think if any of them are going to, again, reach into, set up future movies, it'll be Loki and it'll be Hawkeye. I think the one that everybody keeps forgetting because it's still filming.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Loki proves the multiverse because this is an alternate Loki who took
we've been talking about they're going to introduce the multiverse. That was Endgame does multiversal time travel. It's they're not time traveling, they're quantum universe leaping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right. They've got that basis from Ant-Man too, so they've been playing around with that in there. So
yeah, well, that's also one of my favorite scenes from Endgame where they're explaining time travel. Well, no, you've gone back, so now the past is actually your future. When you come back to the future, your past is still. And it's just like, okay, you're hurting my head.
Exactly.
Time travel usually does that.
Yeah, we just need a tall, thin British guy to lean in a long coat and go timey-wimey and wander out.
Who knows? All right, so we'll come down to our villain Agatha here now.
It was her all along, I understand.
Yes, all along. I want to kind of hear your thoughts on Agatha itself being the villain and how they handled her and how the reveal happened. Alice, do you want to start?
Catherine Hahn. What more to say? But also, a very Agatha Harkness has always been, she's usually a bit more heroic, but she's also kind of on her own side of things, and she's not strictly villainous in this one. And I think that is another reason why it probably helped that we didn't get some of the darker stuff, the Mephistos, the nightmares, to let Agatha be this agent of chaos who just wanted power for herself and also to protect the universe because she lives there and Wanda might destroy it, but two birds, one stone.
The universe, that's where I keep all my stuff.
I like that they showed why Agatha was like that. How they put her on the stake and then she absorbed power sort of by accident. And then when she realized she could do it, she decided she wanted Wanda's to, like you said, protect the universe. Because the Scarlet Witch was, all kinds of bad in her version.
Mm. Yeah, you're prophesized to destroy the universe, I think.
I find it interesting that that's the vibe you got from her, because I very much got the I want to be more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme, and I'm going to take this. I just want to understand how you do what you do, before I take it. But I think that's fair, and that's the thing. Like, people forget, because Agatha Harkness has been in the comics for so long as an ally that people forget that she started out as a villain, and I think that this actually leaves her in a pretty good place. As far as, Wanda's I know where to, she says, you're going to need me to, learn stuff. And she's like, well, I know where to find you. So they could always bring her back. But yeah, I liked her performance. I thought that she did a great job as that sort of nosy neighbor kind of character. But you knew, there was something weird about her from the very beginning. And so, as they sort of ratchet that up throughout the, the thing, and she ratchets up her performance.
And on a production level, we all know Marvel is being notoriously secretive for better or for worse. And sometimes I think it's for worse. And I was surprised when, in an interview, Catherine Hahn said that, oh yeah, they told me exactly where this was going, shortly after I signed on. And, the fact that she was then able to have that in mind through the whole series, I think any actor should have that sort of information, but, since it's not necessarily a given in this franchise anymore, knowing that was refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
Gary?
Yeah, well, I'm going to kind of tee off there with her performance is incredible. She was amazing as Doc Ock in Into the Spider-Verse. It's so great to see her here in this role. As she was the perfect nosy neighbor in the early sitcom stuff. I loved when she did the deliberate which I figure she did to mess with Vision of should I do the line again? Mm-hmm. That was a great moment. Her performance there is really good. It's like an actor, doing the whole, did I mess up the thing? I thought I need an action figure of her in her final form, right now. And I am very happy they didn't kill her off, because that's one of my big problems with most superhero movies lately is they kill off the bad guy, and I'm like, no, but then you can't use them again. And
now I want a picture of her with her 80s workout outfit saying, "This isn't even my final form."
there you go. Well, I'm buying it. It's on. I think it's. It's Nito Shop has her and the Bewitched broom with the Agatha all along in the Bewitched font. It's like, okay, I've got to own that. And I love the fact that her theme, that was a great moment also, by the way, when we hear the Agatha's theme song. It's such a loving tribute to the Munsters. And that she gives the camera is mwah. And the fact that it became #1 on iTunes was just like nice.
Yeah, it's sing-along material, Gary, no question.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it was also one of the best adaptations of a comic book costume to the MCU. And when I was looking at I was like, I remembered her, but I didn't remember the details. So I did some deep diving, and I was like, wow, you can absolutely see those elements in a very modern cinematic way in what she was wearing. I mean, the only difference was really the hair. You know, it's just a new stylist. So I really loved that she wasn't very black and white.
Well, except in the first 3 episodes.
Right. But how they kind of brought on some of those elements. And I can see where you're coming from, like AJ, on some of those things, because that comes into the very cliche Marvel line about absolute power, corrupting absolutely, that whole line about power and where it fits in the MCU and how it relates to her story, and then her awareness of Wanda, and suddenly once she realizes she's the Scarlet Witch, which we finally get Wanda named. And
she doesn't have a funny code name? No, sir.
Nope. Yeah. Now she does. So I think that was, I can see where you're getting the, awareness, but also that hunger for power, which quite a few, it's not unusual in a villain, but it's not the only thing that drives her too. So.
Yeah. And if I can, Jessa is watching. Hi, Jessa. And she actually sent me a text just now saying that she was disappointed Agatha was a villain. Oh, hold on. Because particularly leaving Infinity War on a milestone female empowerment moment, she felt that there was a way to keep her a villain while allowing her to become a mentor. Which that was in the comics. She was Wanda's mentor. In a way, she still kind of is.
I think the door is still also open there.
Yeah, because we didn't kill her.
They learned from her.
Yes.
And she did say, I know where you be.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, she ends up becoming Franklin Richards' nanny at one point. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stories they could, if they ever bring the FF in and have Franklin Richards and all that. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that they could do with Agatha.
Yes, I think there's a lot of possibilities there. So, and I like that they didn't get rid of her. So,
and I do love her persona as the nosy neighbor, though. Hey, hot stuff. Is that you, or did I leave the oven on?
With dinner and everything else, yeah.
We're doing yoga while she's rocking the babies.
So, with kind of bringing back to...
Oh, and that Quicksilver was her husband, Ralph. It took the second time me watching it to pick up that, okay, yeah, he's Ralph.
Yeah.
With that in mind, going back to the other character, per se, of White Vision, which, of course, is the actual physical form Vision, but newly created, being run by an arc reactor. What do you guys, kind of your thoughts on that whole very deeply philosophical discussion you're having, too? And
my senior year of college, I took a course called Philosophy and Science Fiction, and we discussed personal identity and uniqueness with using particularly the ship of Theseus as well as the teleporter problem, and I am so upset that this hadn't come out then, and I don't have my professor's email to just be like, Dr. Milson, did you see this? Dr. Milson!
Let's hope he has.
Yes.
Gary, you want to chime in on this?
For me, as a comic book fan, seeing the fact that we started getting the post-credit stingers was nice. That when we started getting those, when we hit the Marvel era, But seeing White Vision, like I said, as a comic book fan, I screamed. I was like, yes, because that's what happened in the comics. Vision died, he got blown up. They rebuilt him, but he was all white and emotionless. And so I was like, oh my God, they're actually going there.
Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, not only is it super satisfying just from the point of a viewer watching WandaVision and to have this like really cool thing of like, the Vision has been split into like two people basically, and having that whole discussion where it's like, you think it's going to be a slugfest and it's not. They're both like just taking this as, oh, this is an interesting problem. Oh, I wonder what this means, like kind of thing. I thought that was great. But then there's also the comic side of it, and the fact that and that's the thing, people wanted it to be too much one thing or the other. They wanted it to be House of M, or they wanted it to be the Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries, but they're taking Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries, they're taking Vision Quest, they're taking little bits of House of M, just the fact that Wanda has the power to remake reality from House of M and stuff like that, and they're merging it all together to make something that's uniquely MCU. And I really like that, and I like the fact that where we don't know what's going on. Some people said that that's a problem, that we don't know what happened to the White Vision, but I'm like, but that's not the Vision that Wanda was with in Westview. So emotionally, it doesn't make sense. They've positioned him to show up somewhere else, and who knows where that's going to be. Yeah, but just the fact that they said basically he has the data, but it's not like he experienced it. It's like it's something he remembers, but it's like it happened to somebody else. So I'm hoping they go with the emotionless route, because eventually when Wanda does meet him and finds that he's so similar to Vision, but he's not, that's going to be like a very interesting thing for her character and progressing her forward and how they interact. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they deal with that also in the series.
I thought that at the end he had gone to self-terminate, but I'm very happy to know that I just misinterpreted.
I definitely don't see that.
Yeah, he's definitely undergoing personality trauma, and it's like, I got to go deal with this. And
I got to process
the whole dichotomy of the good and the evil Vision per se, and how they just kind of stopped and had this conversation. And it was like, it reminded me actually of Age of Ultron, when Tony Stark said, well, hold on, we need to talk about this, and then shot everybody. And I was like, that could have easily happened.
Yeah.
We went after each other, and I liked that they didn't. That it was very satisfying to me to have them talk and then just White Vision fly away like, okay, I got to deal with this on my own. See you later.
Yeah. And I did like that we did get a little bit of hot Vision on Vision action, and the way they would fight and phase through each other was very cool. But yeah, the second he goes, my mission is to destroy the Vision. I'm not the Vision. And he goes, it doesn't do the typical superhero trope of course you are. He goes, wait, what do you say? And that they stop and have that philosophical debate. And I love the way Paul Bettany trolled the fans, saying that he was going to finally work with an actor he's always wanted to work with. They had great chemistry together. It was just like, I was watching it, I was like, oh, you bastard, I love you.
Yeah, I definitely saw like you had like id and ego, kind of playing back and forth with the two sides of that. And kind of, I don't see them necessarily as good and evil, because you have something that is literally pure emotion from Wanda, and you have something that is pure intellect, and kind of them, but yet there's still the Vision, so they still have to approach things and look at things in a certain way, unlike many other superheroes, which are more, because we connect with them as human beings, we react to them that way. And he's not.
Yeah,
so I love that.
Yeah,
and it ties back to
good and evil was the wrong. It should have been, I guess, White Vision is black and white, and Vision is gray. There's more of the emotionless state, and you're right. It's not really good and evil. It's just very black and white and the gray area.
Yeah, well, I like the way, I think it was Kellen or someone that said the ego super ego, because that really. And it ties back to Infinity War, where they even say, that Vision is an amalgam. He is Mind Stone. He's Jarvis. He's Ultron. He's all that stuff pulling together. And there were so many people I thought that were saying, well, how is he going to work if he doesn't have the Mind Stone? Like, that was the whole point of the end of Infinity War, was we got to get the Mind Stone out of his head and keep him alive. So I figure at some point in the future, hopefully not soon, but some point in the future, the Mind Stone shadow of him that's in Wanda has to merge into Vision.
Well, there's also a bit of him backed up in Wakanda, too.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah, someone get Shuri on the phone, please.
exactly.
Yeah, several people have mentioned that they suspect that White Vision will show up in Black Panther too. I have no idea if that's what will happen, but that would be a logical place for
It would.
us to see him again.
Yeah, Black Panther 2, White Vision.
Black
Okay.
and white.
I want to kind of bring up some of the smaller characters as we tie up things. We had, of course, 2 supporting characters that we have seen before, Jimmy and Darcy.
I need the Jimmy and Darcy mysteries now. I want them running around the country.
What were your thoughts on kind of seeing those 2 old friends come back?
Love Kat Dennings, love Randall Park.
I love Darcy coming back. I just waited for her to make a reference to Meow Meow.
Yes.
Yeah, I like Darcy, and I felt like they ratcheted her down a little bit from Thor 2, where I felt like they took her up too much, and she's back down to like the first Thor level, and I'm like, yes, this is ideal Darcy. Keep her at this level, and I actually really appreciated that. I did not find Jimmy Woo funny in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I did not find him funny in this. I was kind of like, okay, Jimmy, that's fine, but Darcy can show up in other stuff. I like her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I love the fact that through her we found out that there were like whole seasons of each of the series, because she was when she throws out the line of like, I'm invested, or when she next time she washes the dishes, which she does once an episode. So
Right.
that was kind of interesting to me as well.
I was really curious when she went through the barrier. I was like, what are they going to turn her into? I was dying to see what they ended up turning her into. Because it was like, okay, what would Darcy end up as? And I thought they handled that pretty well.
Yeah.
I think they toned her down a bit, which was good.
Can we mention the shade Wanda threw, by the way, at Sword when they get absorbed into her world? She turns them into a bunch of clowns.
Yes.
And a circus. That was like, okay, she may not be in control, but she knows.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely the back of the brain doing things.
Yeah.
I like Jimmy. Mostly, I think he was kind of the cartoon character. But at the end, they really show him kind of taking charge and, in fact, make that comment about he's showing responsibility. He's stepping up. So it might be part of the evolution for the character. He kind of was dismissed much of the time as the cartoon. And now he's maybe coming more into his own. So
It's getting his really big break.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I did love his, in the final episode telling, operative dickwad, but people will be here in an hour. Oh, can you get here in an hour?
And finally, not to be dismissed, one of the other ones I know I did kind of cheer out because I've always been Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel fangirl, Monica Rambeau. I knew she was going to be in this, but I wasn't sure how they were going to bring her into that. I know I reacted a lot when they brought in the undusting and kind of brought that to home on that reaction. So I wanted to kind of see how you guys thought it, and of course her evolution throughout the series.
I think one of the big concrete changes I know that I would make if I had the power to is I loved what they did with her as a narrative foil, but it really only came in her introduction where she learns her mom is dead, and at the end where she says, had I had, if I could have, I would have done the exact same thing you did. And I wish that had gotten more space and more time to really develop that mirror that she is to Wanda.
AJ?
I think the Monica Rambeau character was very well written. I like that they showed her powers, so to speak, at the end. And I would kind of like to explore that a little more, see if she keeps them now that the hex is gone, or see if they just go away. I think that she could have a series of her own that would be very interesting.
Nathan?
she's Captain Marvel as far as I'm concerned. I grew up with her as Captain Marvel, so it's like Carol Danvers is Miss Marvel. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, no, I get everything that's happened since. I'm just saying that's for me, a completely different character. But yeah, no, having her show up, having them setting her up as being Photon, and giving her the power. I thought that was a logical way of giving her the power set that she has in the comics. And so, yeah, I don't think they're going to take that away from her. I think that they're setting that up, that she's going to be in Secret Invasion. That end credit scene with her with the Skrull, I think is setting that up. So, and I was very satisfied, very happy that she wasn't just a name that they slapped on it. That it was like, no, they're giving her superhero debut here. And so I am very excited to see what they do with her character moving forward.
Yeah, I think they really did a good job of subtly telegraphing that she's going to keep her powers, because when they do the X-ray of her and there's nothing there, it's because she is Photon. She's completely energy. And they thought they did a good job of showing it at the end when she throws herself, which again, that's a hero moment, throwing herself in front of the kids to protect them from being shot by Hayward, and we see her body, just is solid light. And that she stops the bullets that way. I thought, they said, your DNA has been rewritten going through the hex twice, and going through that third time is what kind of kicks it over. But again, I love what everybody else said. I have to agree. The fact, especially the undusting, because that really, we got a little bit in Far From Home of what that had to be like for regular people in the world, for the snap to happen, and then the unsnap. Or the blip, if you will.
Yeah, that bothered me that they called it the blip instead of the snap.
Well, how would they know? But yeah,
right. Yeah, nobody saw Thanos other than the Avengers, so
yeah. But seeing that really put a whole new layer on the horror of it, of what it had to be like to live through that, and what it's got to be like to be one of the people who was dusted, and then you come back and 5 years of your life are gone. We got a little bit of it with Ant-Man, when he pops back up and his daughter's grown up and he sees all the changes, but all those people running around in the hospital, that was a moment just of, oh my God, what had that be like?
Right. Yeah, we don't have capacity at the hospital because now like a bunch of patients have come back, with the same diseases they had when they disappeared and everything. And it's like, I'm glad they doubled down, because I thought for sure they were going to hand wave both the Sokovia Accords and the Snap away. And like the next time we saw the movies, they might mention them, but like none of that stuff was like going to impact the story really. But it seems like they're doubling down and saying like, no, not only the Sokovia Accords still in effect, which surprised me because they mentioned that Wanda was in violation of the Sokovia Accords. And of course, with the fact that Wanda just demonstrated the power that she has, that's got to have an impact going forward in how the government treats superpowered individuals. But then also there's the, the whole, just the ramifications of what it's been like for everybody that's been here and what it's like for everybody coming back. And so I'm really excited to see how they deal with that in other shows and movies moving forward.
Yeah, I'm hoping they definitely touch on that. And I think you got to see a little bit of that also with Westview. When you see the shape of what Westview is like when Wanda goes there. And it's, a kind of, just the way the whole town is. It's not just, urban blight kind of thing. It's, half of our population is gone. There's not the maintenance. There's not the different things. So...
Right, all the bricks for that building were still just lying there because why build a house when so many houses are empty right now? And so that had just been sitting there for 5 years.
Yeah, I honestly am somebody who wouldn't mind that much if we just stopped caring about the snap and the blip. But this portrayal actually softened me a little bit on that. I think that seeing it handled here makes me a little more interested to see it continue elsewhere.
Considering what we've said about, Falcon and Winter Soldier and how soon it takes place after Endgame, I would hope that they touch on it in that.
Yeah.
But I don't see it happening as much in Loki. He's doing some popping.
Well, it's got to have an impact on Hawkeye, too, because of how much he was personally affected
by
it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's still a moment that hits me when he does the first time travel test and hears his kid's voice, and yeah,
that gets me.
Yeah, but also speaking of Westview, I've seen a lot of. I'd like to know what everybody else thinks. I've seen a lot of people complain that Wanda doesn't pay for what she did to the town.
It's not that kind of show.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, again, this is like this is going to affect things moving forward, that she wasn't captured and that she doesn't quote unquote pay for it. And that's the whole reason why in her cabin she's keeping that illusion of her just sitting outside while she's in the back reading, is she wants anyone who's watching her to think that she's just lazing around that cabin when she's really inside, like reading the Darkhold. So I mean, she's aware that she's on watch lists and that they're probably going to come for her eventually. So
I also,
yeah.
I mean, yes, Wanda is absolutely culpable to some level, but there is also the degree to which, this was something that happened out of reflex that, yes, she at some point could have stopped, but, it's not like she did this on purpose.
Right.
Not in the
Well,
beginning. I mean, she abandoned it on purpose.
Mhm.
And at that point, she was aware and was aware what she was doing to these people and pulled in a whole bunch more people.
Yeah, well,
but
she
then-
was. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kellen.
Well, you also see that, she comes down to that moment of choice where she's all set to let it go, but then she looks at Vision, she looks at the boys, and she realizes that what that means. So, yes, I don't think she paid for it. I think we'll see more of that. But there's really not enough time for her to pay for it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and in a way, for me, she did emotionally pay for it because, yeah, she sacrificed. She could have easily. She had the power to easily just snap, pardon the expression, Westview back into the hex and keep it going. But she sacrificed, her family to let these people go. Now, I can understand from their point of view, they might be a little more salty about it. They spent the last however long, having her nightmares, but she was in such grief and denial over, at the very end, when they're all confronting her saying, this is what you're doing to us, she kept going, no, why are you making them say this?
I mean,
It took her a while.
They're having her nightmares, but at the same time, they're having her nightmares.
Right.
Well, and the thing about it, these are people who also just lived through the snap.
Right.
And now they get put into this. So
Yeah, and there were the
a lot of
characters.
trauma there.
There were the characters that didn't matter in her story, and so the one woman was like, "Please just let my daughter out of her room." Because she was someone that didn't matter in Wanda's story, so she just kept her in the room the whole time, and so stuff like that. So I totally understand, like the problem there for people and why they would be like afraid of her and feel like she needs to pay. And that's where this gets into a complex situation, because it is a case of, temporary insanity, quote unquote, for lack of a better word. But at the same time, like the amount of damage she did, psychologically, if not like physically, to people was probably also very severe. And you get into that issue of how much capacity did she have to understand what she would, so yeah, it's something where I think it'll have to come up at some point.
So as kind of a tie-up thing, do you think that Wanda is over her grief?
I think she's starting to come to grips with it, but
She has reached a point of acceptance, I think. She's not over it, but I think she has worked through at least the moment of crisis with her grief.
Yeah, I don't even think she's at acceptance yet. I think that she's somewhere between realizing that it's real and realizing that she can change it, but she won't. So she's somewhere between the grief and acceptance still. And it's going to be, for her, a matter of self-control. Because she knows she can make everything right and everything perfect. So I don't think that she's quite reached acceptance yet.
I've seen the analysis of WandaVision as the 5 stages of grief, and I do think that that's the point. Like, she reaches acceptance when she decides that Westview has to come down, because she's accepting the truth of things, that she cannot keep perpetuating this lie because there's a cost to others. Because that's the thing, that's the point that kept getting hammered home to her in the last couple of episodes, is you're affecting these people, and she's like, no, like she was denying that to herself. But then even when the woman's coming to her and being like, please just let my daughter out of her room, I think that's when it really came home to her that, oh my God, like I've been torturing these people. And so I think that's like when but that doesn't mean she's over her grief. Like just the fact that you accept it doesn't mean that you're not still troubled by it and upset about it. It just means that you understand that, that this is a thing that you can't bargain out of and that you can't make, different or whatever. Like she's accepted it. So, but she's still very affected by it.
I also think I think there's a difference of, whether or not we're still in acceptance before the post-credit scene and after the post-credit scene.
Yeah. Yeah, because I really don't think, like kind of Nathan was saying, I don't think it really hit her how much of this was her fault until she was at the end when she throws the throat chokers around the rest of the town to get them to stop coming at her. And she finally has that moment of, oh God, what am I doing? What have I done? Mm-hmm. And again, I'm going to quote Jessa, who sent me a text here of, I agree with this. She says, you don't get over grief. It takes on different forms and often rears up and threatens to overtake you. Add power, especially Scarlet Witch's level of power to that, and watch out.
Absolutely. Yep. Villains have been made from less.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is, like, it would be so easy to tell this story from the point of view of the lady whose kid spent the whole time locked in the closet. You could tell this story from the point of view with Wanda as the villain. I mean, she is kind of the villain through most of the series because she's the one behind this.
Right. Well,
that's House of M.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and we empathize with her because we've seen what she's been through. So we understand. Somebody who hasn't seen it, that all they see, like Hayward, all they see is the outside. Yeah, he's also a dick, but...
I forget the name of the showrunner, but the showrunner actually said in an interview, we didn't need Mephisto because Wanda was the villain.
Yeah. It's Matt Shankar is the director. They didn't have a showrunner per se.
Yeah, but he was the head writer, though, right?
I was going to say, I definitely was saying, Nathan, with you about the 5 stages of grief. I don't think she's through them. Absolutely not. And I think that getting absorbed, literally almost, into the dark hole is part of that next step. And she's still dealing with it. So, all right. Unfortunately, we're at, kind of over time already. But since we had kind of a rough beginning, I wanted to give us all the chance to get through that. I wanted to thank you guys. Any last thoughts on this before we kind of take off?
Wanda's costume was the perfect modernization of the Scarlet Witch costume. I've seen them try so many times in the comics to update her costume, and it never sticks, and they go back to that original 60s one, and I was so happy with the MCU version. I think that it's great.
I meant to bring that up, so good. Thank you.
The second the Diamond Select version of the act figure of her went on sale at Big Bad Toy Store, I ordered it. It's pre-ordered. I can't wait to have my hands on it.
That's creepy.
Have you met me?
Oh, Gary.
But no, it's like this excites me for the rest of the Disney Plus series. I mean, I was already all in because they've done such a good job with The Mandalorian, but that's the Star Wars side. The fact that that Feige is finding people, doing what the MCU does, finding people who have a story to tell, who understand the characters, who know what to keep from the comics and what to jettison and how to modernize it, and letting them just tell that story and trusting them to do it. I can't wait. I can't wait to see where we go. Ms. Marvel, give it to me now.
Alice, any last thought?
Tommy was born first. He was the planned one. That's my last thought. Remember it, know it with all your being.
Was it Tommy we heard in the very final stinger?
I think it was both of them.
Okay.
I think.
The subtitles, I watch everything with subtitles on, it said Tommy.
Okay.
I thought the subtitles didn't say, but
they do.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Rewatch time already.
Yeah, rewatch time.
AJ?
I really just hated the Pietro character.
Where I loved him. And we're not going to get back into that whole thing.
Right.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for being here. This will be up live on our YouTube channel, and we are definitely going to be doing this again for Falcon and Winter Soldier. and all the new things coming down the pike. Lots of good stuff coming up. So thanks, everybody. Good night.